Um, Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome to our webinar for today. This is the East Central and South Africa Microsoft Excel Forum. The host of the webinar is Crisp Excel Training and Consulting. We are corporate and individual trainers on advanced Excel, HR analytics, project management, and Office 365 Power Platform. We are also consultants on data management and analytics. Other than that, if you are in Kenya, we are NITA approved. So our courses are approved by the government, by the IHRM, and by Microsoft. Our presenter of today is not a stranger to webinars and presentations and trainings. Victor Momoh, a certified Microsoft Excel expert and enthusiast. Areas of expertise is automation, business intelligence solution, and also mentoring. I'll send you his social media links. You can follow him on LinkedIn, always has evergreen content. Same thing with Twitter. His YouTube channel is a channel that you need to subscribe if you have not yet. And it's also a link here where Victor is being interviewed for more than 2 hours. If you want to know more about Victor, where he's from, and anything else that you like to ask him, so please visit this YouTube channel. So our topic for today is not two new Excel features. I'm expectant as the rest of you. I am in the dark like the rest of us. So, Victor, welcome, and let's learn about not all new two features in Excel.
Okay, all right. Good. Let me share my screen again. I guess I kind of just let me know when you can see it. Screen. Okay. I think I'll have to keep it seems somewhere here. So for the questions, maybe just to confirm, how do you want us to do that, Crispo? You want like questions to come when people have them, or you want us to wait? I'm okay with them interrupting me. Yeah, I'm okay with them interrupting me. I mean, like, it's sometimes when you have a question, it's always good you kind of ask it at that point, and then, so you don't lose your train of thought. Yeah, exactly. So if people want to do that, I'm okay. I'm okay with that as well. Yeah. So
okay, you can unmute yourself. You can raise your hand.
Yes. Let's keep it semi-formal, right? I guess so.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Crispo. So good morning. I say morning because I'm in Nigeria. It's 8 a.m. here. I was just telling Crispo that I'm barely awake, but I think I am. Now that I started seeing people joining, I'm like, okay, Victor, wake up, so, and it could be afternoon for you or maybe late mornings wherever you are. So it's a pleasure to be here, Crispo. Thanks for inviting me. I always say this everywhere, but I really mean it. I don't take these opportunities for granted because there are so many people doing a lot of great things in the Excel community. So when you look at everybody and then you say, oh, Victor, we want you to come and speak, it's a privilege. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I already see some heavyweights in the meeting. I see Abdallah. I know him from the Excel BI challenges. I think he's from Tanzania also. Yeah, and I think he's also presented here. He presented here on Lambdas, and he's the only reason why I can't present Lambdas now, because I probably can't do as good a job as he did. So I had to look for something else, and the fact is I had to look through a few things that have been presented, and most of the things that were presented were the things I wanted to present. I'm like, oh, okay, so now I'm stuck. So I needed to come up with something else. Anyway, all right. So we are here. So the topic was, purposely written maybe to confuse people a bit, and say not too new features. Not too new in the sense that, yeah, they are new, but they are not too new because a few people already have them. If you are on the beta channel, you most likely have a few of these features. And I just felt it was good that I kind of just maybe bring people up to speed on some of the advancements, in Excel in recent times. You may or may not have the features, but I think it's good you see how they work, something to look forward to. And if you are not already subscribed to the beta channel, I mean, Office Insider for, Microsoft 365, then you probably would consider it because some of these, allow you to do some very cool things. And some of them also help to shorten the time it takes to getting a solution. And some of them also shorten the solution in itself too, kind of make some of the things we do, shorter and simpler. So those are the things I want to talk about today. And I'm going to kind of fuse it, with some things that you already know. But maybe you just kind of see them in a different light. And then for people who follow my channel, you most likely would have seen a few of these things. Yeah, but I mean, I'm not sure how many people in the audience do. So it may be first time for you. If you've seen it before, please don't get angry and say, "Oh, Victor, we've seen this." Sometimes it's good to see it again. It could sound different. All right. So the first thing I want to talk about here are, like check boxes. And most of us are familiar with check boxes, yeah. But back in the day, for us to do that, you kind of come somewhere here. The developer tab, you go to insert, and then you kind of have, like a checkbox here. It has its own issues. It's not going to sit in the cell, first of all, and then sometimes adjusting it to make it look like it's actually sitting in the cell can be a challenge. But what we have now is that we have, checkboxes that are natively in Excel, meaning that, they are in the cell, they're sitting in the cell, so if you cut that cell, paste somewhere, copy, paste somewhere, you're actually taking those checkboxes from that location to a different location, unlike when you had them floating like the way images used to float. And with that addition, it kind of gave me some very, interesting ideas, maybe things that I'd always wanted to do, natively with checkboxes. I'm now able to do them. So I just want to run you through, a few of the examples I have. Some of them are very simple. Some of them are a little advanced. And for those very advanced ones, I may just, demonstrate how it works rather than trying to explain fully the formulas, so that I don't lose everybody. So that's that. So Crispo, what you just help with is if you kind of notice that the screen is freezing, maybe a lot, just let me know.
Actually, I wanted to ask the participants because I'm lagging behind. Sometimes I always do that as a presenter.
Okay.
Abdallah, if you can unmute yourself and tell us whether.
So what I would do is this. I think let me switch. So maybe I switch tabs, and then maybe let's see how quickly people see it. And Abdallah can help us with that. So I'm on the overview tab now. Most people can see that, right? So I want to switch tabs. So just tell me how smooth the switch is. So I've switched now to the next tab, which is filter and choose calls. So can you see that already? Or you're still on the overview tab? So let's just
I can see that already. Filter, choose calls.
Okay, so that's what you can see now. Okay, great. All right. So Abdallah will be our checkbox, so we use him to check.
Yes.
Thanks so much, Abdallah. Nice to, I guess we will meet, in person very soon, but it's good to see you virtually. Yeah. All right. Okay, so let me go ahead then. But if at any time it kind of freezes, just let me know, please. Okay. So so first thing is that, we now have checkboxes, natively in Excel. So right now you can go to the insert tab, and you see a checkbox, somewhere to the right here, right? So you can do this and you see it sitting in the cell. Okay, and what you notice is that if you look at the formula bar, you see that it has a value of false, right? And when you check it, it has a value of true, which makes life very easy because, there are a lot of functions and features in Excel that kind of benefit from the Boolean logic, true and false. For example, the if function, true, false, filter function that has the include elements there, where you really just need a Boolean logic conditional formatting, true, false. So because you now have it that easily that once you do a check is true and once you uncheck is false, it opens up a lot of, opportunities and ideas of what you can do with them. So they've also included, the feature of toggling them very quickly. So what I mean is that if I want to toggle, which is like switch the state from either off to on, I just use a space bar. Okay. So like now, if I select these 6 cells and I press the space bar, just believe me, I pressed it. Everything is checked, right? And when I do is I press the space bar again, everything is unchecked. So if you had, multiple check boxes, whether arranged vertically or horizontally, you can just use a space bar to kind of toggle them. Yeah. It's not a perfect toggle. Why I say it's not perfect toggle is, some of these things are still work in progress anyway. Look at this. If you check 3 of them, a toggle really means an actual reversal of state, meaning that if I were checked, I should become unchecked. If I was unchecked, I should become checked. But that's not what happens. So look at this, for example. If you do a space bar here, what it does is that it uses the state of the first checkbox. That's what controls the rest of them. Okay, so let me not say the first, let me say the active checkbox. Okay, so that's something that I hope that Microsoft would fix. There are ways we can work around doing an actual toggle with like VBA. I've demonstrated that somewhere, but that's not, what I want to talk about today. So anyway, just giving you some of those bits and pieces. You can change the way they look. So basically, if you don't like the black thing, you can always change, but you don't change the feel, you actually change the font. So by changing the font color, it kind of changes the outline for you. So let's say, for example, you make this all red fonts, okay? Or you make 2 of them. Let's make 2 of them green, just for the fun of it. Okay, so when you check it, yeah, then you see how it looks. So not the feel. If you change the feel, that would change, of course, the interior of the cell. This is what changing the feel looks like, which is really not what you want. You just want the checkbox itself, to actually have that. Okay, so that's something you can do, but just note that. There's one last thing before I go into the examples. This is just me giving you an idea of kind of how it works, is the fact that, the checkboxes seem to have like 3 states, not 2. When I say 3, the 2 states you are used to are checked and unchecked, but there seems to be another 3rd state, which is like a ghost mode. Let me show you what I mean there. So when you take this and you do a format painter, for example, and you just put here, okay, right? So what you see is that you have some checkboxes that are kind of, floating. So whenever you make that cell active, the checkbox becomes active, right? But when you look into the formula bar, you see that you're not seeing anything. Okay, so but the checkbox is there. It's like it's waiting for you to then do something with it. The moment you now maybe check it, it has a true. When you uncheck it, it has a false. Now it becomes an actual checkbox that is sitting in that cell. But you can see the rest of them. The rest of them are like ghost cells. Once you hover over them or you make them active, they kind of show up. It's kind of, I don't think it's a bug. Seems more like a feature, so that if you then want to activate them, you can quickly activate them. Yeah. So that's that. About that, let me show you some examples that I now kind of use, the checkboxes for. So these are some things that prior to now you would have had to use VBA developer tab to bring in the checkboxes, but you don't need to do that anymore. And you will notice that a lot of my examples will have the filter function, and that's because that's Crispo's favorite function, as far as I know, So so it's probably one of my favorites as well. I think filter is really powerful. So Crispo, this is in your honor, Okay, so let's look at this example, which is something that we get to do a lot. You use the filter function, you have this data set. You want to filter based on a criteria. Of course, if you're filtering based on a criteria, basically you're filtering horizontally, right? So what I mean by horizontally now is that you're filtering the rows. Somebody may want to say that's vertical, but get what I mean. You're trying to reduce the number of rows, based on the criteria you want. So most times if I say, filter by a particular department, for example, it means it's only going to show me data for those departments or that department in this case. But there are times that you don't also want to return all the columns, right? You just want to return certain columns. Okay, so what do you do? So let's set this up, simply. I can do way more complex filters, but today is a day of simple things, but you will be the judge of that. So what I have here basically is just I have some departments, in a drop down. So I want to filter based on whatever department the user chooses. So basically it will look something like this. Filter, this is your array. Let's take everything here as our array. Let's say that's our array. Now it has an include criteria. The include argument requires basically just a true or false, right? Or a 1 and 0. So what this means is I could then say check the departments, right? Check all these departments. Are they the same thing as the department this person has chosen here? So basically, if you kind of hover over this should give you, true, false. You can see that. So anywhere, whatever is in this cell is HR, right? Human resources, it's a true. Wherever it's not, it's a false. Okay, so you close the bracket on that. Basically, that gives you the answer you want, right? It's dynamic in the sense that, if I come in here and change the department to finance, you can see that it changes, right? And so on. But now here's the interesting thing. It's possible that you do not want to return all the columns. Like you can see here, I have all the columns being returned. So what if I only wanted to return a few columns? Maybe I wanted to return, let's say, first name, last name, department, and age. Okay, so let's take those four. First name, last name, department, and age. What would you do? There are two ways you can do it. Most times we do it with a nested filter, and sometimes you can do it with a choose calls, like say, okay, from this array that has been returned, I want to choose these specific columns, and you tell them I want column 1, column 3, column 5, column 7. Okay, but I won't use that approach because that doesn't lend itself well to what I want to demonstrate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a nested filter. Let me show you how that works basically. So this is the filter. Everything has been returned column wise, but you now want to return some specific columns. So what you do when I say nested filter, it means you put a filter over itself. Okay, so that's what it is. So now you're filtering this that has been returned based on, an array that you're going to give it now. So the array now would be ones and zeros. Ones for the columns you want to return, zeros for the columns you don't want returned. I would have loved to talk about array literals, I think I'm working towards a webinar on just array literals, but not today. It's a tongue twister in itself. Okay, so what you do is this. You take the columns one after the other and you start putting numbers. The ones you want to show, use the number 1. The ones you don't want to show, use 0. So for now, I don't want serial number. I don't want employee ID. So I will do 0. For employee ID, I will say 0. First name, I want first name, I say 1. Last name, I say 1. Just follow me. Hire date, I say 0. Location, I say 0. I want the department, so I'll say 1. Gender, I don't want. Age, I want 1. So basically, I create this, array, which is 0, don't show, 1 show, and then close the bracket. What you see now is that it's reduced. Now you see that I have first name, I have last name, I have department, and I have, the age. Okay, but this doesn't look like the most elegant way to do it, to start typing 010101. So you can use the checkboxes because the checkboxes basically give you the true and false flexibility. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to check out, this whole 01 thing. And I'm just going to feed it with these checkboxes that I have above them, right? And anytime a checkbox is checked, it's going to give me a true, right? Which technically is 1. And then if it's not checked, it's going to give me a false, which technically is 0. So this will make it more dynamic and easy, and flexible for the user. So I close the bracket. You can guess what it's going to return. It's going to return a calc error. You know why anyway. Okay, why? Because I don't have anything returned. So now see what happens. The moment I check first name now appears. If I check last name, it appears. If I check department, it appears. If I check age, it appears, and then I check this. If I want to check all of them at once, for example, I could do a space. That's everything. Take all of them out. So basically, very simple. This is more flexible than writing the arrays, right? 1001. So basically, just use the checkboxes to control what columns you want returned. Let me not leave this sheet on a calc error. So let me switch it back. Okay. So this is also another interesting example. Then I'll show you something cool in there, which is a little old school. So I know some people are like, oh, we don't have checkboxes. Well, enjoy the moment, and then I'll mix it up with things you already know. So now this is just a simple attendance tracker, right? Where you want to be able to check and say, oh, yes, Sean Connery came to school on day 1, day 5, day 7. Then you have a calculation here that says how many days he was present. I'm just doing a simple formula here, which most of us can understand, right? Because I know that the checkboxes will give me true and false, and I know that some doesn't exactly like Booleans. So what I'm just doing is I'm using the multiplied by 1 to convert true and false to 1 and 0. Many ways to do it, right? Double unary, you can add 0 to it, you can divide by 1, but let's leave that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert checkboxes in here, okay? Don't have any data in there, so I might as well just select the whole thing. So insert the checkboxes. You could use the shortcut Alt N C3 based on the location. It's not exactly the shortest shortcut. So what I advise people to do is that you can put it on the quick access toolbar so that you can use a shortcut like maybe Alt 1, Alt 2, Alt 3. That's probably easier than using, Alt N, C3. Okay, so basically we have this. So what we now do is once you check the box, so watch this. Once you check the boxes, you can see the calculation is here, right? But now, yes, something is happening there. And someone is like, Victor, we can't see the numbers. Okay, let's see. We're seeing some blues. What's going on here? Okay, all right, good. That seems to work well. Yeah. Let's just select a few of them. Okay. So you can create an attendance tracker. The reason why this is showing up this way is because I'm using, some custom formatting. Oh, there's a hand up. Let's take that before we go far. Cecilia, please go ahead.
Yes, I missed the way you inserted the boxes in the columns, so I wanted to ask if you can be able to repeat the process.
Oh, no problem at all. Yeah, absolutely. Let me do that.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome.
Okay.
We're here to serve you. If we do it and you miss it, then there's no benefit to us, right? So you need to see it. Okay, so here, so this is it. Basically, you could go insert and you do checkbox, right? That's how to do it visually with the ribbon. So insert checkbox. But what I was just saying is that if you kind of follow the shortcuts, if you press an Alt, right, and you do, so let me just make that selection again. So if you press Alt, and you can see that for the insert, which is where we are going, you need to press an N, right? So you press N. And then if you look at the checkbox, you can see that it has a C3 underneath it. So you just type C3. So basically, you just type those characters one after the other. Alt, N, C3, not at the same time, right? So you get the same thing. That was basically what I was doing. But if you want to do it using the ribbon, then you go insert and you go checkbox. And I was also saying that you could also add this to the quick access toolbar. So you could right click, for example, and add to the quick access toolbar. So now you add it here. So it means that if you press Alt, in my case, if you press Alt 6, it's going to insert the checkbox. Okay, so that makes it shorter than pressing Alt N C3, right? So I guess, Cecilia, you get that right. So
Clearly, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so let's kind of just toggle a few of them on. I'm using the space bar here. I will jump to some other interesting things. I wonder how many things I'm able to cover. I was like, Crispo, how long do we have? Crispo says 1 hour. I'm like, 1 hour? I'm still introducing myself in 1 hour. Okay, so so here now, so you have all of this. So one thing you can do, I know Crispo is laughing. One thing you can do here is you can add conditional formatting to it too, right? Because you know that for every cell where it is unchecked is a false. Every cell where it is checked is a true. And conditional formatting basically likes true or false. So you can add conditional formatting in a way that whenever it is checked, it shows up with a color. Whenever it's not checked, it shows up with a color. So let's do that quickly. So we select the same thing, right? Then we go to conditional formatting. So home, and you do conditional formatting. You can say highlight cell rules, and you can just do equal to, because basically it's saying if it's a true, if it's a false. So you can say equal to. Then I can say if it's a false, what do I want? I want to change the format because I've already mentioned that to change it, you just need to change the font. Okay, so just go to the font. Let's make the false red. So it means when it's not checked, the box will be red. So okay. So you see that you already have reds. Then let's make the ones that are checked. Let's make them green. Okay, so basically, if it is true, right, then let's do the font. I guess my brain is waking up slightly now. Let's do green. Okay, good. So now you have something cool, that's red and green, kind of. So once you toggle it, it becomes green. Once you toggle it, it becomes red. So now the question you may ask me is what's going on in these cells here, right? What's really going on here? This is basically custom formatting, and that's a topic, for another day. I have a full webinar, I think I did with Michael Olafusi's team, where I talked about custom formatting. Now, what custom formatting allows you to do is to say, oh, okay, fine. The basic format for custom formatting is that you can format positive numbers in a way, you can format negative numbers in a way, you can format 0 in a way, and you can format text. So it basically has 4, elements. Okay, so the first will always work for positive, second for negative, third for zeros, fourth for text. But one thing that most people don't realize about custom formatting is that you can also use conditions inside of them. So let me show you what I mean. This is what's going on here, and I can clear this because these are not checkboxes, but this is something good that that you can apply, you know, even if you don't have checkboxes. So let me show you what I'm doing here. I'm going to flip this back to, let's flip this back to general format. So you can see that what you have in the cells are numbers, right? It's the formatting that made it look that way. So how did I do what it is I was doing in there? So let's go in here into format cells, and let me show you something using a custom format. So one thing, like I said, the one people are familiar with is formatting it based on, is it a positive number, negative, 0, or text, but you can use conditions. So this is what you can do. So what I'm doing here is I'm fusing emojis with custom formatting. So to get an emoji, you use Windows. Most people use Windows and full stop, Windows and period, or you can use Windows and semicolon. Okay, so I can do this, and let's say I have a smiley, yes, this shiny guy. You know, I use this guy first. So, and I say, I put a condition in square brackets, and I say when it is greater than, maybe, let me say when it's greater than 6. So what this means is that whenever I have any value in that cell that is greater than 6, you know, it's going to have this smiley face. I put a semicolon, which is my separator, and I go into the second condition. So let me look for another smiley. Yeah, this one. Okay. So I can use this smiley, and I can say, in this case, when it is greater, let me say greater than 3. Okay, so it means that anything between like 4 and 6, you know, will have this particular one, right? That's one. Let's see. Okay, and then the last one doesn't allow for more than 3, at least last time I checked. So let's put a sad face here, you know, if it is anything between 0 and that. So let me look for a sad face. Okay, maybe this one. Okay, so basically what this is going to do is going to look at the values in the cell. It's going to check if it's greater than 6, use this. If it's greater than 3, use this. If not, use this. But now there's another interesting dimension to it. You can also add colors into it, right? So here, instead of just putting the smiley face, you can put a color. Did somebody share something? Okay, well, or someone's trying to flip on their camera. So in here, I can decide to do green. So what this means is that if it's greater than 6, it's going to show up with a green font, and it's going to have this particular smiley. In here, I could also say here, let me use a blue color. There are some standard colors you can use, right? And you can also use, there are 56 of them. So you could use either the actual color names, blue, red, yellow, magenta, or you do color 1, color 56, but you need to know what the colors represent. Then let me say for the last one here, I do red. Let's see if this works. You know, let's see what that does. Okay, so you see what it does. So basically, whenever it is greater than 6, which was what we said, we wanted it to show up as a green, which is the green that you have here. Anytime it is greater than 3, meaning greater than 3 but less than 6, obviously. So like this one here now, you can see this is 4, right? It shows up as a blue. Then whenever it is less than 3, it shows up as a red. So that's taking advantage of custom formatting using emojis. If you also want the values to kind of show in there, you know, then you probably need to put in, you know, some formatting also, you know. So you've put in green, you've put in 6, you may want to put a format in there and say, oh, for this one, I want it to show as 0.00, for example, something like that, let's say, you know, so you can see everywhere it is greater than 6, it's showing as 0.00. You can go back in there and say, oh, for the middle ones, the blues, I want it to just show as, you know, 0. Or let me put 3 zeros just so that everybody sees what I'm saying, like 4 zeros. So you can see. So you can do anything with it. So basically for the different sets, you know, so you don't just use custom formatting just to say positive numbers, negative numbers. You can also put conditions inside of them and say if it's greater than this, greater than that, you know, and so on. So that's kind of what I was doing in there. I just wanted to, you know, demonstrate it. If it's not too clear, of course, I can take it again. But if you watch the replay, you get it. Okay, so now let's do one other thing. Conditional formatting still with checkboxes. In this case, you know, in this one here, what we did was that we formatted the cells that had the checkboxes to say whenever the checkbox is unchecked, you know, do red. Whenever it is checked, do green. But what if you wanted to say, you know, have a cell, a full cell, or, you know, or that row, you know, colored with a certain field based on whether it is checked or not. The reason I like it is this. So let me insert some checkboxes in here. Now I can use Alt-6 based on my quick access toolbar. So you see, very good. Okay, so what I want to be able to do is this. I have these cells having no field, and I want to be able to change the field, you know, from maybe white to green, you know, white to green and so on. I don't want to always come and, you know, select that row like this and then go here and say change the field. I want to use, you know, checkboxes. I feel that that's quicker in my mind, you know, to be able to do that. So I can create that illusion using a conditional format. So what I'm going to do is I select this whole thing and I do conditional formatting, and I'll be formatting each row based on the value of the checkbox on that row. So let's go into new row. let's use a formula to determine what this is. So the first cell here, which is always where you start from in your conditional formatting, top leftmost cell, this is M5. So basically I'm going to do this and say equals to, oh, sorry, made a mistake there. So yes, I'm formatting from M5, but the value I want to format based on rather is the value in the checkbox cell, which is column V. I was getting ahead of myself there. So V5. So what this means is that if V5 returns a true, V5 is this cell, for example. If V5 returns a true, this whole data will be highlighted or formatted based on whatever you choose. If it's a false, nothing will happen, and it will go on that way. That's why you notice that in the formula here, I have it as a mixed reference. The 5 is not logged so that it can move from row to row, but the V is logged so that it would always reference column V. Okay. Now, most people are used to, in conditional formatting, writing, is this equals to true? This is what most people will write. Or is this equals to false? But that's not what you should do. Why? Because conditional formatting just needs you to evaluate to a true or false. Now, don't forget that a checkbox already has the value of either a true or false when it is checked. So what it means is that by just pointing to the value of the checkbox, you already have your true or false. So it means this formula as it is sufficient, because this formula would either be a true if it is checked or a false if it's not checked. So you don't need to do that. That means it's redundancy really to say is true equals to true, It's already either true or false. So basically, you can then do a format. All right, let's do a field this time and make it a green field, and then we put a white font on it. I hope you guys find this interesting, though. Well, I have some very funky things afterwards, but let's see. So what will happen now is that once you check the boxes, right, this for me is faster. So if somebody says, oh, I don't want this to be green, I want it to be white, well, simple, just uncheck, So I think this is kind of, way faster than using the fill and selecting the cells and, selecting the field. So basically, I'm controlling, the fill of these cells beside it, just using the check boxes. Okay, so that's that one. Let me show you this one. This one is an example that I did. I posted this on my YouTube channel. Somebody asked me the question on LinkedIn, and I felt, okay, why not do a video? And let me show you what's going on here. And it's interesting, and I kind of tried to create it in a way that was dynamic. So you have these departments and employees. It still uses the filter function. So still back to Crispo, right? It's still the filter function for most of it. Okay. So what you have here is that you have a list of people, employees, and their departments. Now, what somebody wants to be able to do is that they have a smaller table up here, right? This smaller table. The smaller table has a list of departments. Whenever they check a name, so if I check branding, for example, what I want to see is I want to see all the people in branding, which are these folks here. And you can confirm it if you kind of correlate it with my table here. When I check admin, I want admin and branding, okay? And I want them added. That's what you're seeing here. If I add finance, finance gets added. And then it's dynamic in a way that because I'm using a table here, if I add a new row, and add a new department, for example, let me see which department I don't have, security, okay? So I add security, and let's say I add a checkbox in there for security, and I check it. Security guys are added. Let's see, Jeff Bezos and Bruce Wayne. So you can see them, Jeff Bezos and Bruce Wayne. So the question is, how are we able to make this dynamic in a way that we are only able to return for the departments that we want? So that's what I want to show you. So let me do a Control Z back to like here. Yeah, let's keep it here. So let's see how this one starts up. So this uses like two of my favorite functions, the XLOOKUP function and the filter function. So this is what I'm thinking about in my mind. Like, I need to check for each of these employees. I will check their departments against this table and say, is it checked or is it not checked? So what it means is that I'm looking at Jeff Bezos. I'm looking at this department, it's security. I will look for security in this table. I will check, is security there? If it's there, return for me, the value of the checkbox. Okay, so that's basically what I'm doing. So it's a lookup if you think about it. So let me show you what's going to happen here. So I will do XLOOKUP. I will look for, sorry, I don't use VLOOKUP anymore. I will look for the department. I will look for the department here. So it's like saying check all these departments, all of them, check them against this small table and return for me whatever is in this column. Okay. Now, we'll fix all the problems. So whenever I check one, so branding, look at this. Once I check branding, you see that everybody that has branding starts to show up as what? True. Because what it has done is that it looks at branding, It looks it up in this place here, department. It looks to the right-hand side and it realizes that, oh, branding is checked, and a check mark means what? True. So it returns a true. Okay, so that's the starting point. Anyone that is not checked returns a false. But you have another problem, which is hash NA. So where does the hash NA come in? The hash NA comes in when XLOOKUP looks for that department and doesn't find it at all. For example, there's no security here. There's no human resources. So what happens? Everybody who is in security and human resources, you can see all of them, they have a hash NA, which can pose a problem. So basically, if XLOOKUP cannot find it, it's as good as a false, right? It's not needed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to modify my XLOOKUP. That's why I like XLOOKUP 2 over VLOOKUP. I don't need to use an if error and say if it's an error, do this. XLOOKUP already has its own if error, right? Which is this argument, if not found. So if it's not found, I will say put a false, meaning if you can't find it, it's as good as it's not needed really. So, and I have this. So now once you have this false and true, then you already have what you need for the filter function, because the filter needs what? Just a false and true. So by the time you put this inside the filter, what happens? Every row that has a true, that name shows up. Every name that has a false doesn't show up. So what I'm going to do now, let me expand my formula bar. So I'm going to do a filter, and I'm saying I'm going to filter on the employee name, okay, based on this criteria. So what it means is that look through that employee table, that column. Anywhere you see a false, don't return the name. Anywhere you see a true, return the name. Basically is what I'm doing, okay? Right? And that's the answer there. The only thing I added was I added a sort over it so that, you know, it would always be alphabetical. And basically, you have that. I've said basically like 1 million times today. Good. So let me kind of take it down a little. So once you check, you know, so you can see it. That's kind of how it works. Okay. So a good use of the checkbox. This one is a very complex one. Let me skip it for now. So let me come here and show you dynamic charts, still using checkboxes. So what I'm doing here is simple. I have this data, you know, some names, and then maybe what they sold in different regions, north, south, east, and west. But I want the graph to only show me, you know, whichever ones I check. You know, if I check south now and I check east, you can see that everybody now has 4 bars. So for Crispo, you can see higher sale is in the north. Most people, you know, higher sale is in the north for myself and so on. And if I check this one on check, you know, it's also just showing me for the particular, you know, regions that I have checked. So this is a dynamic chart. So how am I doing this and what's making this happen? The secret is right here, as you can see. I'm not that smart, so I put it there, but I didn't hide it well enough, so you all can see it. But what I did was I made it white font. So, so let's change the font. Let's change it to black. Okay, so you kind of see what's going on in there. So this is really what the chart is picking up. The chart is not plotting this data as it is. The chart is plotting this data. So what's happening here? It's very simple. It's still using, again, Crispo's function, the filter function. So this is what I like the checkbox, because it gives that visual feel of what's going on. So whenever you check, you know, you see it update and so on. So let's see how to create, you know, the data I have in here. Let me just recreate it on the side. So it's basically, yeah, this basic again. It's simple. It's a filter function. Okay. So what we're going to do is this. We're going to do a filter and say I'm filtering, you know, this whole data. Okay. I'm filtering this simply based on whatever this is. It's that simple. So it's like any column that has a 1 is going to show up, like I did when I did the nested filters, if you remember. So anywhere it has a 0, it's not going to show up. That's what it is. So it's like you want to filter this whole data, but you're not filtering based on the rows now. You're filtering based on the columns. Okay, so that's all you're doing. So you can see that all the ones that are checked, once you uncheck it, it's no more shows up. You know, once you check west, it's added to it. The only thing is that we need, of course, the first column, you know, because we need the names of the people to go along with the data. So many ways to do that. But what I decided to do in my own case is to do an H stack. An H stack is a horizontal stack, which is saying take this array and stack it horizontally with the other array. So take this array and stack them left to right. V stack will stack them top to bottom. So take H stack and just take this first column and then add it to whatever the filter returns. So it means that the first column will always be the names of the people. Then the other columns will be based on whatever is checked. Okay, so you see that. And then you can uncheck, you know, you check, right? And that's what this chart is feeding off. So the chart basically looks at the data and whatever it sees, that's what it plots. So it's a dynamic chart using checkboxes. If you were also observant, you will notice that my title, my chart title is also dynamic in the sense that when I check north, south, and east, you can see that I have here north, south, and east, right? And when I check, north and south, I have north and south. When I check only north, I have only north. So how am I doing that? This is something old school that a lot of people need to know if you don't already know. Okay, so basically, again, once you have the chart title selected, you can go to the formula bar and point to a cell that has the expression you want, right? And whenever that cell changes, obviously the title is going to change. So let's look at the cell I have here. The cell I have here is C22. So what cell is C22? That looks like what? This cell here. So let's make it black. So let's see what's going on in there. So what's happening in there? It's really just using an array to text. Have you used array to text before? Let's see how many people have used array to text. Most people use text join, but text join and array to text do the same thing in some sense. Array to text has a fixed delimiter. The delimiter for array to text is comma and space. But with text join, you have the flexibility to put any delimiter you want. But if I need a comma and space, which is kind of what I need most times, I just use an array to text. So this is what I'm doing here. I'm doing exactly what you think I'm doing. So I'm doing a filter. And then I filter these headers, right? I filter these headers based on whatever is chosen here. So that's what I'm doing. Okay, so the rest are black. I think that's what's going on. They are there. Okay, so if I uncheck, it's only west. If I uncheck, it's only north and west, okay, it's only north. So basically, this is what it has. Then I put an array to text around it, which means that array to text now says, take all the elements that you can see, this north, south, and east, and then glue them together using a comma and a space. That's what I'm doing. So array to text, and then, this. Okay, so that's what it does. So it just takes the three elements and put a comma space in there. The only problem you can have is when you have nothing, right? Then it starts to show, a calc error there. So, north, south, east, and west. The only thing I added in my filter was, okay, if you don't have anything, just put, a double quote. But basically, so that's it. So this is the title, and then I'm pointing the chart title to that cell. So pointing the chart title to that cell, whenever that cell changes, it picks it up, and that's that. So enough about checkboxes. It's almost turning into a checkbox webinar. But anyway, something interesting. So let's switch gears a little and let's talk about, the image function, which is something I also like, that allows you to also do, some cool things. What the image function now does, I guess the part that we just need to get them to fix or update is being able to pick an image from, somewhere on your C drive, like on the local drive. This time now you have to point to somewhere on the cloud, or a link on the web. So what I have here is have a few names, and I have the links to their images. So these links are, pointing to, some web address. So you can use the image function to do like an image. Like I said, I was showing you new features, right? So somebody's like, why image function? Well, because it's new. So I do image function and I point to this cell. So once you do that, now, oh yeah, I see. Okay. Who knows why I'm getting this error? Anybody? I know. I'm just asking. Does anybody know? So let me tell you what's going on here. Whenever you download a file from the web, the file automatically is blocked by default for security reasons. Okay. So what I did was that I worked on another computer, and then I pushed it to OneDrive, and then I pulled it down this morning as I was about starting. So the file is still blocked. So there are a few things that I really can't do. So this is how you fix it. So let me close. So I'm going to go and I'm going to open the folder. Again, you never know what people may find useful. So let me show you how that works. So this is the file. Let me right click the file, and then let's do properties. Okay. Now this is the one I'm using. Doesn't look like it's supposed to have here, blocked, and then I'm supposed to unblock it. But for some strange reason, that's not showing up. But I guess this is the one I'm using. Okay, let's see. Let me go again. That's what's supposed to happen. But yeah, it's just a day in the life of, it's just a day in the life of what do you call it? Of a presenter. Everything works well in training, and then you get to the main show and doesn't happen. But whenever you download a file, you can right click, check the properties. You will see at the bottom they're blocked, and then you uncheck it, and you're fine. So I was talking about the image function. So The image function basically pulls, values from these links, and then it gives you these images. The good thing about them is that they are sitting in the cell. They are not floating. So they are sitting in the cell, meaning that I can copy this cell, for example, paste here, right? So it is in the cell. It's not just an image that is hovering over the cell. Okay, so to convince you that that's what's happening, you can, perform, regular operations with them. So for example, we have a couple of people here, and I added like 2 Kenyans at the bottom. 2 people that you should know. Everybody knows Crispo, and maybe because I like sports, I like Julius Yego, So now what I want to do is I want to filter this data, to show me just those who are from Kenya. So I can use the same filter function. Today is for Crispo, so it's all filtered. So let's take everything, right? We can take the entire data. So it's like filtering the whole table. If you want to come back to where your formula is, you press Control Backspace. What most people do when they do this, because I press Control Shift down and I came down, most people will start scrolling up back to where the formula is. You don't need to do that. If you do Control and Backspace, it brings you back to where you were. So that's something you can add if you don't already know it. Okay, so and then my criteria is I want to check that the country here, is equals to Kenya. So basically, I do equals to Kenya here. Okay, and you can see that this shows me only the Kenyans that are in there, right? And you can see that the images come along with it. Okay, so the images come along. So because the images are sitting in those cells. So that's using a filter on an image function. And you can then say, oh, I don't want to see all the other columns. I only want, the first column and, kind of, the last one. Yeah, so somebody could say, oh, first and last. Let's see, how do we do that? Give me your ideas on this one. I will show you 2 ways. One that I plan to show and one that I didn't plan to show. So I can use choose calls and say from this array that is returned, I want to show only these columns. Which columns? I want column 1, which is the first thing. Then I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm very lazy, so let's do 7. Okay, so and then you can see it returns only the name and the image. Which other way could we have done it? We could probably try a take function. It may work, it may not work. I think it would. You try a take. If you do take of 1, meaning pick the first column from the left. If you do take of -1, it means pick the first column from the right. So what if you do both of them together using an array literal? Something like this, that looks like 1 and -1. The only thing I need to do here is that this first take is doing rows. So the argument I need is columns. So meaning take the first column and at the same time take 1 column from the left. Let's see if it works. Let's see. If it doesn't work, well, it's what it is. Okay, so now you see it's something tricky. So now it's not able to return the other rows. It only returns, like the first one. Those are the kind of things I knew would happen anyway. So, but I will go with, the choose calls. But what I was just trying to show you here is the fact that the images are sitting in the cell. So you can perform operations on them as if they are cell values, right? So that's one. Then I did something cool here, which is because I now have the image function. This is not an Excel thing, but these are just some things that may help you. I'm taking advantage of dynamic arrays depending on the task, and I'm able to now create this kind of organogram, which is dynamic based off the other data. So if you look at the data in here, you can see that everybody has a role, right? A CEO, a COO, a CFO, and so on. Okay, so what I did here was I have, titles for everybody, and then based on the titles, I do a lookup to pick the names. And based on the same title, I do a lookup to pick the image. So let me show you how I set this up. So I have a blank one here. So let's say I have somebody here who is a CEO. So I want to know who's that person. I'm assuming here, of course, there's only one person who has that title. So I can do an X lookup. I pick, of course, the CEO, which is that cell. I come into my here, and then I say, oh, CEO, I'm looking for it here in the row column, and I want you to return the name of the person. Let's switch somewhere to the left. Okay, so it's basically a lookup, right? So look for the role. If it's a CEO, match it, give me the name. Okay, so let's close the bracket here. So now it gives me that name. So let me copy this across the other cells that I need it. So you can do Control Select. That's one good thing we can do now. So I can do Control Select all the cells I need, and do Control V at once. Okay, so I get all the names, that I want at once. Okay, so then I go to the image and then I do X lookup. I pick, the title, CEO. I come back to this place here again. I say, oh, where do I find CEO? CEO is in the row column. I say, look for it here. and then return the image for me. Okay, so that's not what I want. I need to take out the all anyway, but let me just do it again. I just need this. Okay, so now I have the image. So I can copy this, do my control, select again. I wanted to set this up quickly for you guys to see. Here, okay, and do Control V, right? So now everybody is where they are. The good thing now is I have some drop downs here. So if, for example, I say, oh no, I don't want the CFO to be here. I want somebody else here. I can just change this title. I can change it to security manager. Okay, then the security manager comes up. CTO, no, this shouldn't be CTO. This should be security head. Okay, security head. Here, this shouldn't be COO. This should be Scrum Master, and it's dynamic. So basically, I have like a dynamic organogram, which is working off the XLOOKUP and the image function, in the sense that I'm able to pick based on the title. I can pick the name, I can pick, the image, and XLOOKUP helps me to do that, and the image function returns the image. So that's very cool. Next thing I want to show, still on the image function, is that there's also a functionality now that allows you to pick data from images. And this is really good because if you had an image and then somebody wanted to do an analysis on it, you have to most likely copy that data, manually type it into Excel, to get it to work. But you don't need to do that anymore. You can pick from, an image. So let me show you that. I've saved 2 images on my system. Okay, so there are 2 of them. There's one which is like a screenshot that I took. So that one should work well. Then this one here, taken with phone. This one was, I took the picture using my phone. You can see that this is like a phone image. So I would try to read this into Excel and see if Excel can figure it out. My hand wasn't exactly straight, so you see it's kind of bent and all that. But let's see what Excel does. But it's a good thing because if you had a large, image with a lot of text, then you don't need to type it one after the other. Yeah, so Excel tries at least. So you go to data and you say from picture, and you say here, let's say picture from file. Let me see. Okay, so let me go to that folder. I think I put it on my desktop. I'm surprised it's not even here. I think Kenyan Meetup, yes, here. Okay, so Kenyan Meetup. So let's take this one first of all. So Excel tries to read from it. It tries to analyze the image and sees if it can figure out what's going on. Okay, so it's gotten this, right? And then it tells me, oh, maybe there are a few things I need to review. So let me see. So this one, you see this 11. It's kind of confusing it. It's looking here like I. It's not exactly 11. I will leave it that way and say accept so that you guys can see what's going to go on. Here, yeah, this is some, I think, county in Kenya, so, but it's correct. I think it's what he picked it correctly. So I will say, okay, accept, and yeah, I'm like, okay, I'm good. So now I will insert the data. Okay, so now this is from an image. And you can see the data is into Excel. Now, these are values in the cells. But that cell that had 1, that cell still has a problem because I looked at it, I thought it was 1, but it actually wasn't. So this one, I would probably just update myself to 11. But see how far that feature got me. I didn't have to do anything. The corrections I needed to make were very minimal. So that one looked like it worked very well. You may say, oh, because it's a screenshot, it's very nice. So let's try the one where I actually picked it from my phone. Okay, so this is one from my phone. So let's see if that one, if it's able to do a similar thing, but it's a cool feature. So let me see what it has. Oh, this one has more things to review. Oh, tip, just accept everything. That's, it's probably correct for all of them, but again, so let's do insert data. So we save our time. Okay, so almost, similar thing. So this is a cool feature if you want to read from images. You can do it on your phone. If you have Excel on your mobile, you can do it also here. Other thing I want to talk about, I'm going to skip Python, just save you people some headaches. Then let me maybe just mention something on lambdas, something new. Then I'll just show you guys something on group by. That will kind of be it. I hope, well, it's been worth your time. Maybe not what you expected, but well, that's what I chose to present. Okay, so now let's look at this data here. We want to get a sum of, all these numbers per row. So Crispo has attempted a certain exam like 6 times. Let me see how well the Crispo do. Not bad, he got 96. What about Victor? Wow, Victor hasn't done well at all. Let me change one of my scores. Looks like I'm doing so bad. So let me change it to 98. So what we want to do here is we want to get a sum of each of the rows, right? But what you want to do is you want it to be dynamic. Everybody knows that you can get the sum. If you use auto sum, you can even do that. You can select this whole thing and do alt equals. you get the sum. But this is sitting in one cell. This is one cell. This is one cell. You want a formula that is what a dynamic array that gets all the sums at once. So how do you do that? Normally you do that with, in this case, you can use a by row and say, I want to give you this calculation. I want you to perform it row by row. I'm sure it's something Abdallah must have shown when he presented on lambdas. But that's the point I'm trying to make here, is the improvement to that. Okay? Not improvement to what Abdallah did, or improvement to how the feature works now in Excel. So you do by row, and then you select the whole data. Because you've said by row, it means that the calculation you give it, it will do it row by row, even if you've given it multiple rows. Okay, that's the idea. The function was designed to do that. So you come in here, you say, oh, you pull up a lambda. You say lambda, then you say x. In my case, x is just what I like to use. So x in this case represents every row. So every row will be denoted as x. What do you want to do with each row? You want to sum it. Basically what you want to do. Okay, so it's like saying for each x, sum x, meaning for each row, sum it. Okay, and give me the answer. So this is what it's going to do. It's going to sum it and give you the same answers. But the thing with this one is that it's sitting in one cell and it spills to the other cell. So if I press delete here, everything goes at once. Okay, but now what they've done now is that they've modified it, with what they call like the eta reduced lambdas. That doesn't require you to write all this long thing anymore. So they've created some custom functions. So instead of doing lambda x sum x, what you just do is they now have a custom function called sum. So all that nonsense needs to go away. Just say do a sum and do it by row. That's the meaning of what I've written on the screen now. So it's going to look at those rows one after the other and sum each one as one. Okay, and you see the answer. So they've reduced those lambda expressions. So now we can do something like this. So we can do sum. We could also do average, for example. There are a couple of things you can do there. You can see them, all of them on the list, like the typical things you will see with subtotal function, or like the aggregate function in some sense. So you can do average, and it's going to average all those scores for you. So that's something cool that I thought I wanted to show. So let me get on to group by. This is the last one. I think I'll do group by and pivot by. We are on the hour 9, but I know we didn't start at 8. But I'm here. I'm not in a hurry. Once I commit to webinars, I'm there. So when I stop this, then I guess we can take questions. And your questions don't necessarily need to be related to what I've presented. It can be any other thing. I'll be more than happy to answer if I know the answer. Okay, so let me show you something new, which is very new. Many people don't have the function again. I was telling Crispo the story just before you guys came online. I prepared this, and suddenly yesterday night when I checked on Excel, the function had disappeared. I was like, well, webinar is in tatters. The function group by just disappeared. So what I did was then to go to my second PC, and luckily it was still on that one. So I did all the work there. That was why I had to move it to Google Drive. So, things like this can happen. And I jokingly was telling somebody, I'm thinking he's on the call. He was like, but Victor, why are you trying to show a feature that, as he said, is still on fire, meaning that it's still being cooked? Why are you trying to show something that is not fully there? But anyway, luckily for me, this morning when I woke up and tried it, the function is back. Yeah, but my backup plan was to use my other computer. So let me show you the group by. The group by and the pivot by are basically, more or less like working like the pivot table. But the beautiful thing about them now is that, with the pivot table, you remember that we always have to refresh, right? So whenever you have a pivot table, it doesn't refresh automatically. So you always have to click refresh. You can set it up, using a macro. You can, like when people also do some Power Query type thing, they will set, the time for it to refresh. But I like dynamic arrays in the sense that it's a formula, right? So it means that whenever the input changes, the output changes. So that's why I like it. So now see what you can do with the group by. It's very simple. Some of the things we used to do with complex functions and maybe a pivot table, we can do them now with the group by and pivot by. Let me show you an example. So look at this table I have here. And in this table, what I want to do is I want to group all the items. You can see that I have items that are duplicated. You see vegetable oil, washing soap, and all that. I want to group them, meaning give me just the unique list of items and give me, the sales per item. I can solve this with a different formula. I will use a unique function on one side to get the unique list of things. I will use a filter to get the other items and sum it, and then I will stack both of them together. But I don't need that anymore. I can use one function, group by. Just follow, it's very simple. Group by. The first thing it says, what do you want to have in the rows? Which is like in a pivot table. Don't forget your 4 quadrants in a pivot table. You have the row quadrant. So I want to see items. So I select all the items. Okay. Then it says, what do you want in the values? I want the sales. So it's more like say, I want to see sales per item. That's what it means, Simple. Then the last thing it asks you is what function do you want to use? And it gives you some default functions already. So I can say I want to do a sum. So what am I doing? I'm saying take all the items, get me the unique list of items, and give me a sum. So look at this. Very simple. This is what you do with a pivot table, so to say. Let me put a pivot table to the side so you guys can see what I'm talking about here. So let's do next, and then let's put it here. So let's just put it somewhere here. Finish. Do you want to replace? Oh, I have some data there. Okay. Yeah, I hid some things in there. I was too smart for myself. So let me do it here. Let's go here. Yeah, sorry, I didn't select that again. Just give me a second here. I'll kind of finish this up. Existing worksheet, finish. Okay, this is good. So let's see field lists. Why are you hidden? Okay, so look at this. If you wanted to do exactly what I did just now, what you do is that you select items. So you can see items go into here, and then you select sales. Basically the same answer, correct? So now I'm not using a pivot table, I'm using a function, okay? And then the function gives me the same answer as what a pivot table will give me. Then there are many, updates you can make to it. So now you can do some. At the same time, you can even decide, okay, let me not get ahead of myself. Let me just step forward a little, okay? You can ask if you want to have field headers or not. There's still a slight glitch with this, but if I want to have field headers, I can say yes and show. Let me use number 3, meaning that you can see that I don't have headers in terms of saying item and sales. So let me just use 3 so you see what that is. Then it says total depth. Do you want to show grand totals? Do you want to show grand totals and subtotals? Grand totals and subtotals would only work when you have more than 2 categories, but let's skip that argument for now. Let's see sort order. So sort order is like saying, the way this was returned, it was returned alphabetically based on the items, B, C, D, S, and so on. But you may want to look at it ascending order or descending order based on the sales. So this is your column 2, right? So this is your second column. So you can say sort order is 2. What it means is that sort it based on column 2. Because that number is positive, it will sort it ascending. So this is what it will do. Okay? So it's sorting it now in ascending order. If you had rather use -2 instead of 2 there, then it will sort it in descending order, but based on column 2. Okay, so you see that now it's going from what? Highest to lowest. The kind of things you can do in a pivot table too, right? Right click and say what? Sort, and you say largest to smallest. So you can see that we basically mirror ourselves, but now we are using what? Formulas. If I change something in this table here, let's take this soap. Now we have 15 here. The total here is 45. Let me change this 15 to 20. Okay, so see what happens. The total here updates to what? 50. The total in the pivot table is still 45. I have to what? Refresh, right? So you see that dynamic arrays are cool. So when I refresh now, it picks up the 50. So I'm not trying to say pivot tables are dead, but the point I'm trying to make is that that's why I like dynamic arrays, in the sense that it's responding automatically because it's just linked via a formula. Okay, so you can see that it has really all the functionalities of the pivot table. So it's more like a pivot table now with formulas. So let's see one other thing you can also do. You can even come back in here, for example, here where we have, sum, and you can say, oh no, I don't want to do only a sum. If most of you notice, you realize that while I was doing that here, there are a lot of items you could do. You could do sum, you could do average. So you could do multiple at once. So what you can do here is you can decide to do an H stack. Let me take out the rest of them and say, I want to do a sum, and at the same time, I want to do an average. So what it means is that take that data, give me sum, give me average. So let's see what that gives us. Okay, so it gives us a sum and it gives us an average at the same time. So let me come into the pivot table. So it means I need to bring my sales here again, right? And in here, value field settings, and I do average. Okay, right? And you see that we have basically the same answer. The only difference here is that I didn't sort this. So if I sort this from highest to lowest, then we'll have basically the same thing. Okay, so let me just come here. So comma, and then sort order. And I say I want to sort it, maybe in this case, based on column 2, descending -2. Okay, so you can see that we have basically the same thing with the pivot table. So I really like this, because it's just mirroring the pivot table, exactly as it should be. Okay, so let me do something else, because there's one argument here that I may want to use, which is like, the filter. Just think about this. If you are familiar with pivot tables, you kind of get what is going on. So if you look in here, there are 4 quadrants, right? You have a rows, you have a columns, you have values, and then you have filters. And typically, whatever you put in filter, filters, the table. So that's something, you know, that you may want to do. So in this case, you may decide, oh, you want to filter, you know, based on maybe the payment mode. So let me show you what I can do here. So let's get, you know, the payment modes. Let me insert, let me just insert some columns here. Okay, so let's get what the unique payment modes are, and I'll show you what I'm trying to set up here. So let me get this. Let's put some checkboxes here. So what I want to be able to do is that when I check cash, I want you to only do this whole thing based on cash. When I check transfer, I want you to give me this summary only based on transfer, which is like what you would do here in a pivot table. So what do you do in a pivot table? Let's come back to the pivot table, field list. So in a pivot table, what would you do? You would take that payment mode and you take it into the filters column, right? Or you can maybe add it as a visual slicer. So maybe we do that. Let's make it a slicer. Okay, so you can come to payment mode, right click, and you say add a slicer. So this is cool. You know, we can bring it here. So it means that if I then select, you know, card, you know, this is showing me only card. If I select cash, this is only cash. Then if I do transfer, okay. So let's try and see if we can replicate the same thing using this function. Okay, so this is where you take advantage of the last argument of the function. The last argument of the function is something CRISPR will like, which is called a filter array. So what it means is that it wants to see an array of, oh, for all these rows, let me know which ones I'm to include, which ones I'm not to include, which is like a 1 0 1 0 kind of thing. So if it is a 1, that row will be included. If it's not, it won't be included. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make that operation based on this and the checkbox. So still using the checkbox again, and I'm going to use my XLOOKUP trick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look up all these items, you know, their payment mode against this my table and check what it returns. This is kind of what I'm trying to do here. Look at this. I will do XLOOKUP. I will look at all these payment modes. I will look them up against these 3 items, and then I will return the value in the checkbox like this. So you can see that all of them are false now, meaning that I didn't check any of them. If I check this card, you can see that I have some trues or cash. If I check card, you can see that I have those trues. So this expression that I've written is what I will put in that filter array. So what it means is that the function is going to do the calculations, but it's going to respect the filter. So let me go into my function, and then let me add that part into it. Someone's like, well, Victor, I told you it was going to be simple, and you guys agree with me. So now let's go into the filter array. So the filter array basically is just doing an XLOOKUP. So do an XLOOKUP of, you know, everything here, look them up in here, and return whatever you have in here. So that's going to give me a true or false, and that's what the filter array needs. Okay, so now let's close the brackets. Let's see. Let's look at this answer now. This is when you select cash and card. Let's look at the answers. Let's do the same thing with the pivot table and see if our answers are basically the same. So what did I select? I did cash and card. So card and cash. My control is not working. Good. So do you see that we have basically the same answer? So it's the same thing. If you add transfer here, the answer changes. Let's add transfer here. And you have, so you have a function now that basically can do what a pivot table can do. So this is the group by function. The group by function is the younger brother of the pivot by function. What's the difference between the group by and the pivot by? The group by just does, if you look at the arguments in the group by just has, the first thing is just row labels. So you can only have something on the row and then do calculations in front. But when you go to pivot by allows you to do rows and columns, and you can do calculations in between. So let me show you just one example with the same thing using a pivot by. So it's like saying just the way you do a pivot table, basically. For the row fields, let's say it's items, we select all the items. Then across the columns, we want to select, let's use the payment mode. So what it means is that you have, going down the rows, all the items, across the columns, you have the payment mode. What do you want to do? The values. Let's say we want to use sales. That's what we want to see, and we want to sum it. Let's just do that. Simple. Okay, so do you see what it creates for you? More or less like a cross tabulation. So you can see all your items, you know, here. So these are all your items, and you can see you know, the payment modes here and then total. And you can do all the same things I was doing. So the pivot by has only one argument that is different. So this one has row fields and has column fields. But if you looked at, what's it called, the group by had just row fields. It doesn't have column fields. So that's really the difference. So a pivot by basically can do what the group by does in my mind. All I will do is I will skip that argument of column fields, and a pivot by will become, you know, a group by. I will show you, I think there was one example I wanted to show you know, which I think is cool. That will probably be the last thing I'm going to do, just to respect your times, if you don't mind. But like I always say, if the participants insist, go on. Who am I? I would be. Let me show you what I want to do here. How it is now easier using a group by. Let me explain what I want to do. It's simple. You can see the name Cristiano Ronaldo. It appears in a couple of places, right? So you see Cristiano Ronaldo has visited a couple of cities. So what I want to see here is I want to see all the names of the people there, and I want to see the cities they've visited concatenated with a comma. So if Cristiano has visited London, Brussels, Paris, I want to see it as London, Brussels, Paris, kind of like that. So before I would do this with a filter and a text join, add a map function into it. But now, you know, you can do it with a group by. Look at this. A pivot table can't do this. So I will do a group by, and I'll say I want you to group the names. So let's say I group the names. Okay. And then it says what values. These are the values, the cities that you visited. What do you want to do with, you know, what do you want to do with those values? You don't want to sum them because you can't sum the cities. It has what? Array to text. What does array to text do? Array to text takes those elements and it concatenates them using a comma space as a delimiter. So see what the result would look like. Do you see? Automatically, it gives us each of the names and the cities, you know, that they visited, separated by a comma. So one formula, you know, the only thing I don't like here is total. Total doesn't make sense to me here, right? There's no need for the total. So what we'll do is we'll come in there, you know, and we move further. Field headers, we can decide to put them in, yes, and show. Then totals, I say no totals, 0, meaning I don't want to see totals. It doesn't make sense in this particular example. Okay, so now I have the answer. The only thing that, you know, can get a little maybe more complex here is that if you look at Lionel Messi, for example, he visited Brussels twice. Can you see that? So there's Brussels here for Lionel Messi, and there's also Brussels here for Lionel Messi, right? So, but you want to now maybe say remove the duplicates. You want to show only the unique ones. Then you might not need to write a kind of tricky, you know, lambda inside of here. So instead of doing array to text, you know, first we can pull up a lambda. We will get, you know, the unique items, and then we can put an array to text over it. I'm not trying to explain this one. I'm just trying to show you what it can do. So now you can see that we have 2 Brussels. So I can make it 1, you know, by trying something like this. In here, I will do a lambda. I'll say X. The first thing I want to see is I want to see unique of X. So it will give me the unique cities that the person has visited. Okay. On top of these unique cities, I can decide to sort it, you know, and say I want to sort, you know, those cities alphabetically. Then over that, I now want to do an array to text on it. So which, you know, think about it. It's not that difficult. I can you follow what I'm doing. The point is take all the cities that the person has visited, make it unique, meaning remove the duplicate. So now every item appears only once. Sort it, meaning it's now in alphabetical order. Then concatenate it using a comma space. That's basically what this is. I'm probably missing 1 bracket there. There should be a red bracket. Okay, and then let's see that. So now you see that Lionel Messi is only showing Brussels as 1, and they are arranged alphabetically, B, K, R, V. Very cool things that you can do. Let's leave it at this for now. Let questions be what will drive me in whichever direction you guys want to drive me. But I hope I didn't bore you too much, you know, and I hope it wasn't too complex. Well, there are some simple things in there, but if you have any questions, you want me to take any part again, I'm more than happy to do that. So Crispo, I'm handing over to you for the meantime.
I wish you can go on for like another 1 hour. It's like a thriller movie for me. So I'm glued to my seat.
I'm here.
I wanted to see what are the new shortcuts, what are the ideas.
Well, I can show them really. No, those ones are those.
Or maybe you can come and do part 2 of.
That's fine. Anyhow you want it, you know. But I just felt that some of these functionalities, they are new. We may not have them, but it's good to see the potential that they, you know, they possess, which is really what I was trying to demonstrate. That dynamic arrays have gotten to a point where they literally control everything. So if I can do a pivot table with formulas, you know, for me, it's way better. The whole refresh thing is always a pain in my neck, you know. So I just wanted to show a few of those things and give you some creative ideas how I maybe may use them. So yeah, I don't know if there are questions. I wasn't looking at the chat. I was just stuck on, you know, on what I was doing.
No, I don't think you said you can show the new shortcuts.
Oh yes, I can do that. That's quick. Yeah, there's
very fast.
Things. Yeah, so yeah, that's yeah. In fact, when I get no
Okay.
questions, I'm always like, okay, was I that confusing? Is it that people totally understood me or people didn't understand me at all? Okay, no, the first one, this one's like just simple because I was just looking at updates. So most people should know now that if you want to open the Power Query editor, you can use Alt F12. You know, so if you wanted to, so rather than going the whole data, get data, you can just do Alt F12, right? So let me see that. So once you do Alt F12, you know, that opens the Power Query editor. Because like I said, the reason I focused on these ones were just to say these are some that people may not be aware of. Okay, so that's one. The other one is when you have a formula and you want to do paste as values. So let's say we have a formula here, you know, just some random numbers. Okay, so they are random, so they keep changing. If you want to paste them as values, you do Control C normally. People would always do different shortcuts, you know. Alt ESV is typically what I use. Some do Control Alt VV, Alt HVV, you know. But now you can do Control Alt V, which is a little easier to press. So you can do Control Alt V, you know. I hope. Well, looks like my own. Looks like I don't have it on this one anyway. So you know, different computers missing different features, but that's something, you know, that, you know, you can take advantage of. They are the automatic data conversions. These ones are not shortcuts, but just, you know, some new things that you need to check out. Let's go to options. Sorry, that's not what I wanted to press, which is why I like to press shortcuts. Alt TO will get me where I'm going, you know, instead of all that. So you can see some automatic data conversion features that you have here, which you can check and uncheck. Most of us should have experienced this in our Excel life. You know, when you are typing and you write, oh, maybe, you know, 2E7, you know, and something like that, it makes it exponential. Yeah. Then when you have a very long number, sometimes, you know, it keeps only the first digits. Do you want it to discard the others? So you can control, you know, a couple of that. Then look at this one here, remove leading zeros and convert to a number. Okay. So that's why when you type phone numbers, right? Phone numbers, the zero always disappears. So let me uncheck this and see, right? When I now type a phone number that starts with zero, I mean, our number starts with zero here. So it's always an issue. So whenever you type the number, the zero always disappears. This is what I mean. So most of you should have noticed that it's not just a phone number thing. Let's go back there and let me check it back so you see what I mean. So if you do okay now and you type a number 080, that's my number, by the way. You see that the zero goes off, but now you now have the functionality to control, you know, some of those features. So if you like it, you feel it's a feature, then, you know, why not, you know, leave it checked. If you don't like it, you know, then uncheck it. And that's really what I wanted to show in that. If you allow me for like 3 more minutes, I can show you something I hope most people know. This one everybody should have. Let me just show you this, please. If you, this is just good. This one wouldn't be worth a part 2. I mean, like, there's not too much I can do here. How many of us have seen this functionality in Excel, analyze data? It's there, but a lot of people don't see it. Ideas. It used to be called ideas, and it's now called analyze data. It's more like a simple and quick AI feature. It's not new in the sense of new. I put it there because I know a lot of people haven't seen it or don't use it. If you are somebody who is struggling with, oh, I'm not even sure how to work with pivot tables and all that, then you need this functionality because it literally gives you what you want. So let me show you this. So just select, this is the same data set I was working with. Just do analyze data. And then it has, what do you call it? NLP, right? Like natural language processing. So you can actually speak to it in some English and it would understand. So look at this now. It has analyzed the data and it's already telling you what it thinks, you know, that you may need to, you know, do. So look at this. If you don't even know how to do a pivot table, look at what it has done here. Here it says, I don't know, do I have contractor here? Yes, I have salesperson. Okay, so here it's doing like, you know, staff status and putting the name of the staff. It's thinking I want to do like a staff status and salesperson, blah, 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 blah. It has different, you know, pivot tables, the things I want to plot. The good thing is that even if I don't know how to do this, you know, for example, there are still many results. Even if I don't know how to insert a pivot table, just by some of the things it's giving me, you know, as in I can see some things I can already do. And once you insert it, it automatically inserts for you, you know, a pivot table, you know, a pivot chart, for example, and then you can take it from there. So even if you're not familiar with it, you know, you can obviously start from there. So let's see. But most of this, it's kind of doing, you know, the ones that have noticeably higher things. Let me show you something you can do. So let's assume you can say, give me sales by, let me see, payment mode. Okay, I'm typing it because I know the headers. My header is called sales and I have payment mode header. So the moment I type sales by payment mode, see, it gave me a pivot table, that automatically a pivot chart that automatically respected what I did. I can say insert pivot chart, and automatically I have a pivot chart that gives me sales by payment mode. I don't know anything about pivot tables, but I've inserted, a pivot table just because, I'm able to use ideas. I could say also, I can say sales and tips, by payment mode. Let's try that one and see. What does it do? See what it does. Let's insert this. Can you see? It gave us the payment mode, and it gave us sales, and it gave us what? Tip. So even if you don't know how to set up a pivot table, automatically, just with ideas and you being able to communicate to it in simple language, it's able to give you some of the things you want. And once you have that, of course, you can take it from there. Now you could do something like this and say, let me say item. You say, okay, sales, by item, and then let me call it. Let me say I want a donut chart. You can even put a chart name. So I want to see the sales based on the items, and I want you to put it as a donut chart. Let's see what it does. Okay, so look at this. Even though everybody's like, no, don't use this type of chart. But see, it respects what I say. It's giving me the sales based on the items, and it's also drawn for me, a donut chart. So it's the fact that you can get to use functionalities that you're not really aware of, but Excel knows what you're looking for if you can communicate to it in English. Let me show you one other one that, is kind of cool. I purposely put in here, if you look at this column, this tip column, you can see this number 5, you can see this number 6.2. Those two numbers are outliers because the others are kind of in the range of 0.5 to about 1.4. These are outliers. And, you want to look at a large data set. I just decided to use a small one, and say, oh, I want to see outliers. So let me say, I will say outliers by tip, meaning, can you show me the outliers by tip? So let's see what it does if it's able to get them. So look at this. It says, yes, sales tip appear to form a cluster with 2 outliers. Let's insert that. And you see that it has given you the 2 outliers already. So this is outlier number 5, and this is outlier number 6.2. So it's giving you a chart, and it's already highlighting for you, the outliers, and you can see them, automatically to see that, oh yeah, these are the outliers, based on the parameter that I've chosen. And I'm doing all that by doing nothing. Absolutely. All I'm just doing is speaking to it in a language that I think, it understands, right? And that's basically what it does. So that's something that if you're not using, you should be using, right? So for some of you, you may see it as ideas. It used to be ideas. It had like an icon that looked like a lightning or thunder bolt, but now it's called analyze data. So it uses natural language processing. So you can do pivot tables, you can do pivot charts, you can do charts. You can even ask a direct question, and say, question like this. Say, what is the total sale? So say, let's see, what is the total sale for employees in London? Let's do something like that. Let's see what it does, Okay, it says 35. So employees in London, let's see if that's correct. Let's put a filter here, so let's do employees, emp, okay, and then London. Let's do London here. Oh yeah, great. That happens when I try to get ahead of myself. London, okay, so you see it. London has 2, 15 and 20, 35, and it automatically gave us that using a pivot table. So it's basically done it. So see what it did. It's understood what I asked for, and it put 2 filters. So if you kind of set this up, see. So what he did was he put in the filters, staff status, because he saw employee, so he figured it was in staff status. And because I said London, he figured location should be there too. And then he put the sales in here. So if I'm not familiar with the pivot table, this may be a struggle for me to set up. But now see how easy it is to set it up by just speaking English, So for all of us who are English speakers, we have ideas that we can, get ideas and insights from. So Crispo, I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much.
I think we can still go on for like another 1 hour, but I think it will be too much for the day.
Yeah, there's just so much. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
What I'll do is that you share the workbook, and then personally I have to go through it in slow motion. You are really a fast talker, but Yeah, so I'll share the recording and somebody can really watch it very slowly doing
Don't mind
all.
me. I was trying to
It's
cover too much
fully
in 1
packed with
hour.
the
You can start.
idea.
But
Yeah,
again,
yeah, that's okay. That's okay.
I think before I leave, you know, like I say, I think the person who is always in the most hurry is the facilitator, right? So if I'm not in a hurry, I think that's fine. So
Yeah.
I'm open to taking questions, you know, people have, and really if they want me to repeat something, you know, I'm always more than glad to do that. Like I say, there's no benefit to you know, to me just doing these things and I'm the only one who understands it. There's no point setting up a webinar, that right? I can sit down by myself and just do it. So if you are here and
True.
you kind of feel, oh, Victor,
True.
take this part again, you know, I'll be very glad to do that. Someone is like, he's still using 2016.
So
If you're
if
using
you have a
2016,
question,
wow, that's like in the Stone Age.
yeah, Nelson.
No,
Nelson needs to up his game.
yeah, really. Again, you know, when I take trainings and I tell them about Office 365, like there have been times I volunteer for, that's what I was supposed to be doing today, Society of Petroleum Engineers, you know, to teach students or people who are just new in the oil and gas industry. I keep telling them that, you know, you can get an Office 365 license, you know, and I tell them that Microsoft doesn't pay me anything for saying that, you know, but I'm saying it because I feel that it will definitely help your functionality. I know how I used to do a lot of these things. Some of these things I'm doing right now in 2016 are practically, you may want to say, impossible. You know, I mean, some of these functions, I'm not talking about the pivot table now. That's fine. You know, even though there are some improvements to, you know, like the pivot table, right? But the point is that in terms of the functions and the ease with which, like, look at unique function, for example. That's one function that blows my mind every time. Because before, that's not something, you know, you could just do easily. But now you just look at 1,000 rows of data, just say equals to unique and that, and it gives you a unique list. Now with lambdas totally opened up, you know, I mean, a whole new world where you can now create your own functions. Things that we always had to do with VBA, you know, to create user-defined functions, UDFs. But now, you know, basically we can do them, you know, with Lambda. So my point is that hopping on the Office 365, you know, license, it's not a waste of, you know, resources at all. What I also advise people is that for the family version, right, I lose track now of the price, but before it used to be about maybe $6 or $7, you know, per month, right? It feels like it's a lot, but the thing is that one license can be shared with 5 other people. So it means that 6 people can come together, each person bringing like $1, you know, per month, and then you get an Office 365 license. That's basically what the mass works out to. Of course, depending on your country and the exchange rate, it starts dancing around, but the dollar version is still basically the same. So it's not expensive. We'll probably spend more than that on data or maybe, you know, sweet tooth type things. So it will be good. I think it's a good investment. You know, these functions would make your life way easier. You know, I know it's a challenge when you are on Office 365 and people around you are not. When you send them your functions or your workbook, they can't use it. But good enough, if you work in an organization where everybody it's perfect. So my organization, everybody uses 365. So I'm never thinking once I can see a function, it means everybody can see it, you know. I mean, not the inside that channel, but so I use XLOOKUP. I don't use VLOOKUP because I know the other person can see it and use the XLOOKUP. You know, understanding what I'm doing is a different, you know, conversation entirely. But I would just advise that if you can, please try and you know, subscribe to Office 365. It will make life way more easier for you, which is kind of what it is. And I don't get paid for what I just said. So this is me just giving you my sincere opinion on, you know, on what it is. So yeah, that's that.
Yeah, very true. And actually, other than the new dynamic functions, it comes with the Power Platform. It has Power Labs, Power Automate, and Power BI. So those extra apps makes it even more worthy. I think, as you say, the dollar per month is small money for any person who wants to make his life easy.
I think you said it better than I would have. Yeah, that's really what it is. So yeah, because sometimes people say, oh yeah, I have this Excel problem. Naturally, I'm going to solve it with Office 365. But the person then says, oh, I use Office 2016, you know. I just lose network immediately, you know, and I'm like, oh, I can't do this. Like because I see some problems. I'm like, how do I solve this in Office 2016? I mean, I grew from the Office 2003 days. So really, I'm conversant with 03, 07, 10, 13, 16, 19, 21 down this way. So it's not for lack of being able to use them. It's the fact that it's going to be really stressful. you know, I mean, coming up, I guess that's where my Gavin, you know, made his name, you know, by teaching us how to do Control Shift Enter formulas back in the day. You know, I was stuck on his channel. I read his book, you know, because Control Shift Enter was like the in thing. And you know, those formulas were crazy. You needed to understand how arrays worked and all of that. But now some of those things are much, much, much simpler. So yeah. Yeah. Will you please share the Excel? Yeah. I'm more than happy. Yes, I'll share the Excel with you. No, nothing to hide. Nothing to hide. How do you want me to do that, Crispo? You want me to send it to you, or
you send it to me on LinkedIn, and then I'll share when I'm publishing the.
Okay. Yeah, you can put it in
YouTube
the description. Yes. And the description of the YouTube video.
And the recording
that's
as
fine.
well.
I'll send it to you once we are done here. No, nothing proprietary. Well, I mean, use it. Once I see it anywhere, I know it's Victor who did this, so it's fine. Oh, it says okay at the recording as well. Okay. But Crispo, is it okay?
I will.
Okay. Oh, let me send it to you. I guess you take it from there. Yeah. Maybe.
Yes. Yeah. So David, if you have not registered for the webinar, I have a list of every person who had registered, and I'm going to send them the recording plus the workbook. So if you have not registered, get your name there so that I can be able to share everything after all this is done.
All right.
Yeah. Anyone else who has a question, maybe you can raise your hand and mute yourself before we ask Victor the last question.
I'm so worried that nobody asked any questions. I'm like, what did I do wrong?
No, I think they are still digesting I'm still digesting some of the things that you have said. So
yeah, again,
it's not you, it's us.
Oh, you know,
Victor,
yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, the session was so intense, so people, I hope they understood well. That's why they're so quiet.
I totally agree. You know, and it's not like my intent is not always to make it intense, but it turns out being that way. But one thing I always try to say, and I say this every time, is maybe I'm always very, you know, honest with myself. I go for a webinar, I'm not expecting to understand everything. And that may mean that I'm not that smart, you know, but I'm okay with that because I kind of understand that sometimes it's different from when we are doing a classroom training, right? Like an actual training, you know. So what I do is, okay, high level, what are the concepts? I go back and watch the video. I do that a lot. I mean, I can't count some videos that I've had to watch it like 2-3 times. So I am always happy once I get into a session and I see that, oh, it's being recorded. I'm like, oh, perfect, you know. But again, I know someone is like, well, but that means I'll spend 1 hour in the class and then, you know, 1 hour watching it again. But the truth of the matter is that you only get the benefits from these things by actually doing them. It's one thing to see me do it. I can do it even very slowly. And you see it and you're like, oh, I understood everything. And then you try to do it and you just forget that there was a part where I put a semicolon that you didn't remember. So the only way we get to learn these things and master them is by actually practicing, you know. So it's one thing to see me do it. It's one thing to even watch the recording again, you know. But that's why I'm happy to send the workbook across so that you can actually get your hands, you know, dirty. And like, that's when you really get to see like, oh, it's not as easy as you think it is. Some people struggle with even double clicking, you know. So so I understand, right? But yeah, it's okay if there are no questions. You don't force questions out of people. But I mean, I hope you got some concepts and things that maybe got your mind thinking, like maybe this is something I probably can do.
A number of people who admire your achievements and what you do. Is there like what was the process of getting to where you are? How did you get to where you are? How, if somebody wants to get to where you are, how do they, which path do they take?
But the point is that everything that one becomes an expert at, you know, you definitely dedicate time to it. I keep telling people, like, don't be too hard on yourself. You know, sometimes people are like, oh, if only I could do this, that you do, if only. I'm like, see, you need to understand that this is a process. I say to everybody, I'm not the smartest guy out there. If everybody who is trying to learn Excel has spent the number of hours and time that I've spent trying to understand and learn Excel, they'll probably be better than I am. That's a fact. So the point is, whatever you dedicate your time to, you get better at it. There are some people that are so good with movies, they know who acted what movie, the names of the movie, the time, the name of the character in the movie and all of that, and they don't know a single thing about Excel. And I don't know maybe so much about movies like they do. That's because I really don't dedicate that much time to it, So whatever you dedicate time to, you get better at doing. There's a slide I normally share in terms of the process and the few things that I think that people can do, but I may just talk about them the way I remember them. I can see the slide in my it's there visually, but I don't have it physically. But one thing I always say is this: it's always good to learn in a structured manner. One challenge that most of us have had is that we didn't learn in a structured way, right? We learn on a need to use basis. It's okay, like you have a problem today, it requires XLOOKUP. You learn XLOOKUP for that problem, you solve it. Tomorrow you need VBA, you get one line of code, and all that. But the point is that your learning is kind of haphazard, which is what happens really, because we get thrown into tasks and we need to figure them out. But it's good, to learn in a structured manner. When you learn in a structured manner, which means either taking a course or reading a book, it gives you a lot of depth. So I, for one, I read, the Excel Bible by John Wackenbach, and that's what I always recommend to people. I read the 2007 and 2010 edition. Literally, if you read that book from cover to cover, you are already an expert without even writing the exam, because the guy really is a genius. So if you understand, in fact, the first 15 or 20 chapters, you can do way, more with Excel. So it's always good to follow, like a systematic approach to learning. So learn, take a course, read a book, that'll help you. One other thing, like I said slightly when I was answering the last question, is that, you need to do things with it. You don't just learn and stock up that information. If you don't do anything with it, you don't get any benefit from it. One thing I realized that once you give yourself projects, you will get stuck. When you get stuck, then you go and search. And when you search, you learn. I find that the experts seem to be the people who even Google the most. I tend to Google a lot too, because I always feel like, even when I know something, I Google and I want to see what other perspectives are out there, which is why anytime you look at my Internet Explorer, I have 1 million tabs open, because on the same matter, I'm trying to check 5 different viewpoints. So it's good, to also see many viewpoints. It gives you a lot of, depth, and breadth. One other thing is also, teaching people. When you teach, it forces you to learn. There are many things I showed today that I know how to do, but because I was coming here to teach people, I was up till 3 a.m. Victor, you can't afford to embarrass yourself. And some of you think, no, this guy's an expert, he can just show up. No, I don't just show up like that, So teaching people forces you, to learn. Back in the day, one other thing that helped me a lot was the Excel forums, the online forums, but I don't think they're as popular anymore, as we have them right now, because of maybe a lot of other things. Yeah, we still have forums like LinkedIn, but I'm talking about MrExcel.com. So then I used to be on, MrExcel.com, excelforums.net, chandu.org, but I was basically, on MrExcel.com. When I see problems, then a lot of them, they're over my head. I can't even figure it out. Then people post solutions, and you see 5 different solutions to the same problem. I pick the 5, I put them in Excel, I start to break the formula down. What's the person doing? What's the logic? And sometimes you ask the question and the person explains. It's really helped me, because it made me then have more than one way of solving most problems, and that kind of created a mindset in me that every time I see a problem, I'm always thinking, this is how people do it. Is there any other way it can be done? And is there a better way to do it? So I learned a lot from the forums. Back then too, I was working like a shift job, and then I had 4 days on, 4 days off. So my 4 days off was just me sitting on MrExcel.com and just looking through, problems, solutions. The ones I could answer, I answered. The ones I can't answer, I copied their solution, try and understand it. Then gradually I grew to the point where I was also able to answer a lot of questions, there. I think I had 4,000 or so posts, in total over there. But yeah, I don't have that much time these days to do that. I know it's a short question you asked me, but with a long answer. But the point is, I'm trying to tell my own story. It may be different for people, and now times have changed, things are different. But I think one, try have a focus, master things in bits. There are a few people who are masters of everything. So some of us kind of choose where we want to focus on. I, for example, am You know, I like dynamic arrays and formulas. So if you watch most of my channel and things like that, I'm that kind of person. There are people who are just power query type people, and that's really what catches their fancy. There are some other people who are just VBA type people. There are some people who are just, you know, charts, dynamic charts. You know, you hardly will be a master of everything, you know, but it's good you have an idea of most things, and then you kind of focus on one and be a master of something. Yeah, I feel the only way you stand out is by having something that other people don't have. If you know everything at moderate levels, then you're never really going to stand out, my opinion, you know. So you need to have one thing that you know so well that people can say, okay, yes, you know, we know many people can do this, but this guy can do this very well. So I kind of focus in my own mind, you know. I would say VBA and formulas, but I don't do too much VBA anymore, maybe because of lambdas, you know. So that's that. So yeah, if you kind of follow through all that, you know, kind of convoluted answer, but yeah, in there you will see a lot of things to pick, you know, kind of connect the dots. I'm sure you'll be fine, you know. So